This is a call for an uprising. We welcome you to today's show and ask those of you who have not subscribed to please subscribe to our YouTube channel as we continue to expose the satanic Illuminati agenda and the ushering in of the Antichrist. On this show, I've talked a lot about demonic possession, how it's on the rise worldwide. A lot of these events are occurring where people are becoming demonically possessed, specifically children at schools. We're seeing that going on around the world. We've seen it in India. We've seen it in South Africa. It's going on in America too. And when stories come out about demonic possession, they're always usually there to discredit it. And that's probably why this story is out. But the Satanists know, because they're clever and they obviously control everything, so they know how to pin people and how to push their emotions one way or the other, because they're controlling all of this and they're controlling the media. But when they release stories like this about psychiatrists, you know, this psychiatrist, a very world-renowned psychiatrist named Dr. Richard Gallagher, came out, and Washington Post and all these major publications picked up on the story where he said that there's a difference between somebody with mental problems and demonic possession. So he's admitting that demonic possession is real. He tells his story where he says, you know, back in the 1980s, he was introduced to a woman who referred to herself as a witch, a satanic priestess, and even the queen of Satan. The doctor came to know the woman when he was asked by a Catholic priest to determine whether she was suffering from mental illness or demonic possession. At the time, Dr. Gallagher was a devout skeptic, despite being a practicing Catholic. According to the doctor, after examining the woman, he felt that she was actually the victim of demonic possession. He said that she exhibited symptoms that could not be explained by conventional means, including knowledge of the unknowable, knowing people's secret witnesses, knowing how strangers had died, and even speaking unfamiliar languages. The doctor said he would only describe her affliction as paranormal, namely demonic possession. So this doctor came out, and if he knew about this in the 80s, he talked about it in the 80s, but he's never come out publicly. Now it's out publicly, and I think they do stuff like this in response to stories leaking about demonic possession going on around the world. You know, stories have come out with this movie, The Conjuring, where people were becoming demonically possessed from watching the film because there's attachments in the film. They actually do real rituals in the film. So they will release stories like this. Well, they'll say, well, there could be a thing as demonic possession because they have to play both sides. But of course they discredit it. So they go through this article, and then they, you know, show tweets from people out there. So it says the doctor's partnership with the priest would ultimately span more than 2 decades and hundreds of consults. The psychiatrist in question was given a highly specialized and unique job to filter cases of mental illness from cases of legitimate demonic possession. And then they show, you know, the Washington Post says the psychiatrist is diagnosed, I diagnose mental illness. Also, I help spot demonic possession. And somebody replies and said, how is this guy even board certified? Then they have somebody else who says, you know, we are not dealing here with purely material reality, but with spiritual realm, because that's what the doctor says. And the guy says, time to see a psychiatrist. So they use this. This is how they play with people's emotions. They talk about this article. They say that it's credible that demonic possession is real. And we know, people listen to this channel, we know demonic possession is real. We know it through scripture, okay? We know that Jesus Christ was casting demons out of people who were demonically possessed. The Bible tells us this. It's hidden from us. They classify these things as mental illnesses to hide the truth from people. So they think that the Bible's fiction. They don't think any of this is real. That's why it's so fictionalized in the movies. They use the movies to fictionalize it to people and make it seem like make-believe, but they're also using the movies to actually do rituals on the audience that's watching it, because they are performing real rituals and actually using real demons and stuff like that. So they have people in the article, of course, discrediting their own articles. The article's talking about demonic possession being real. The name of the article is Demonic Possession. One psychiatrist says it's real and on the rise in the U.S. And there's many articles on it. Like I said, the Washington Post picked up on it. And then, of course, throughout the article, they're showing tweets from other people who are cracking jokes saying, how's this guy board certified? All of this stuff to discredit the truth. And that's how they obviously operate. They go on to talk about the Vatican, and how the Vatican doesn't officially track exorcism in any way. Of course the Vatican doesn't track exorcism, or the Vatican doesn't track demonic possession, because they're all there practicing Satanism underneath the church or in plain sight at the Vatican. So of course they don't track it. Of course they don't, you know, acknowledge it as real. They don't make mention of it. You know, they look at it like it's the movie The Exorcist. They try to make it off like it's fake. And then, you know, we have other guys around the United States who actually perform exorcists, and more reverends and ministers are coming forward talking about how how they're doing this. So one guy says he gets 20 requests a week to do exorcisms, which is twice what it once was. So it's on the rise, and we're seeing it around the world, and they're actually acknowledging it, not just in this article, in many articles that came out in the last few weeks with this Dr. Gallagher acknowledging it as something that could be real, because they have to address these things when all these stories come out, when there's a pandemic going on around the world where, 100 students all get hospitalized. They all have seizures. They're all foaming at the mouth and speaking in tongues. They start seeing that people are picking up on the stories. They have to do something and say, oh, well, it could be real because this doctor says so. But of course, in the article, like I said, they discredit the doctor, make him look like a lunatic, where they have, post people's tweets making fun of it and mocking it. But by showing this, they're at least giving knowledge to it, and that's how the mind control works, by hinting at it that it could be real or it couldn't be real, because they have to at least give you opposition to the theories, right? If they never talked about demonic possession and more and more people were starting to question it, and you'd say, why are they hiding it? Why aren't they admitting it? So you have some people coming forward, but it is a real serious issue. It needs to be addressed because demonic possession is on the rise, and that's through all of these sources of forms of media. It's because we're under spiritual attack. We are in a spiritual warfare, but they're using these films like The Conjuring, and there's another one coming out in a few days or a few weeks. Another movie. It's like the same exact movie coming out. I'm not even sure what it's called. Let me look real quick. It's called Lights Out. It's another one of these. The Conjuring just came out a few weeks ago. They have Neon Demon, you have The Conjuring, you have Lights Out. Every single month these films come out that talk about demonic possession. They're telling you it's real, but they're fictionalizing it. But they're also using these films as spiritual warfare because they're actually using real recordings in these movies. The Conjuring 2 used real recordings of the actual demonic possession. And people in the audience, one guy reportedly died watching the film, went into a seizure. I mean, real stuff is going on around the world. These stories aren't going to make mainstream news. Of course they're not. And people are going to discredit it because it's not on national news. And that's the only thing that people want to believe, is anything that's on national news is truth. But anything else that comes out, they go, oh, the internet, somebody made up the story, or some crazy website. You can't trust that. But they trust CNN and they trust NBC. And that's how this mind control works. But it's not a coincidence that these movies come out every single 3 to 4 weeks. So then you got Lights Out coming out. You had The Witch this year. You have The Conjuring. You have Lights Out. I'm sure there's so many others. I talked about a movie. I exposed it's called Satanic. I mean, all of this stuff showing demonic possession is real. You have all the Paranormal Activity movies. I mean, there are thousands of movies on this one subject. And people don't connect the dots. They just go, well, it's an interesting subject. It makes money. People want to see. And they could tell you whatever they want and it would make money. They could promote the stupidest concept of a movie. They could have a movie about a guy who eats garbage for 3 hours. And they could say, it's starring George Clooney and it's really, really amazing. And they could convince everybody that it's amazing and everybody would go see it. And they'd be like, did I just watch George Clooney eat out of the garbage can for 3 hours and just talk? Oh, that was wonderful. How artistic. Because the media tells you it's artistic. Okay, they can come up with ideas for new movies. There's a reason that they're all the same, because it's all part of the conditioning that they have us under. That's why there's, you don't see these slasher films as much anymore. You see these demonic possession films because they've moved on from that, because that was the beginning of getting people prepared for what was going on. They started with testing it out with Michael Myers and Nightmare on Elm Street and all this stuff. And now it's more geared towards demonic possession, exorcism, showing you what's really going on, because they know that the conditioning works, and they're using the conditioning on people, and people can't look at it from the other perspective and say, why are they constantly showing me demonic possession? Why is it in every movie that comes out? Why are they showing me people floating and levitating and being possessed by demons? Why? Oh, because it makes money. Like I said, they could tell you any movie with the most ridiculous plot and promote it down your throat, and people will say it's good if the television tells them it's good, because they can't formulate their own opinion. So this is just more about demonic possession. I wanted to point out because it is on the rise, and people need to be aware of this. That's why it's so important to stay strong in your faith and stay strong in the scriptures, because we are under spiritual attack. We are in spiritual warfare, and a lot of Christians out there are a part of this matrix that we live in. They're not in the spiritual battle. They're not a part of it. They just go to church. They don't read their Bible. They refuse to acknowledge truths in the Bible like demonic possession, like the spiritual battle. And they think that the Bible is just about loving everybody and accepting everything. That's how the media has tricked them and duped them and created these lukewarm Christians that we have out there. So be aware that this spiritual battle is real. Spiritual warfare is going on. Demonic possession is on the rise. That's why it's important. Now, you're protected if you have the Holy Spirit with you. Okay, but there's other people around you that might not be protected in your home, or, you have to constantly stay in prayer. You have to try to guide people to Christ, because that's what matters most, is getting people to Christ. But it's important to be aware of what's going on around you, because demonic possession is on the rise. Okay, we are in spiritual battle and in spiritual warfare, and they're even acknowledging it. But of course, like I said, when they acknowledge stuff like this, they just do it to give you the other perspective, and then they discredit it on their own. They discredit it because they make either the headline of the story sound ridiculous so that people roll their eyes and say it's not real. And then they, link it up to, well, this psychiatrist says demonic possession is real, like the movie The Conjuring or The Exorcist. And then people go, oh, yeah, give me a break. Flying people all around. Wouldn't they be all out in public, expose it? Because nobody's brain can process it. They can only process what they're told. And then, they regurgitate what they're told when they go to work or they go out to a bar or they go out to a club or they go out somewhere and talk to somebody else. They just regurgitate the same nonsense that the television tells them, which is all lies, all fabricated. None of it is a truth. It's all staged. That's why we are inside of this matrix, and it's important to wake people up and help save souls and guide them back to our Father in heaven. So I thank you for listening to today's show. Stay strong in your scriptures. Be aware that the spiritual warfare is real. It's a spiritual battle. Remember Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Always remember that. Thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.